With the constant declarations going on in politics as we head towards 2023, the leaders of the Pan-Igbo Socio-Cultural Organization, Ohanaeze Ndigbo, and the leading members of the All Progressive Congress in the Southwest warned that the high number of southern presidential aspirants was a threat to the efforts of the region to produce the next president. Out of the 15 presidential aspirants that have been screened by the main opposition People's Democratic Party, 5 are from the north, while 10 are from the south. In the APC, at least over 11 southerners are already in the race. Yesterday, we witnessed a hat-trick of declarations to add to the already populated list. Declarations of ex-governor of Edo State, Adams Oshiomhole, governor of Ekiti State, Kayode Fayemi, and the Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Godswill Akpabio. We have the fresh aspirants, Governor Kayode Fayemi and former Governor Adams Oshiomhole on Newsnight. Let's take a look at what they had to say before we come back for a chat.
If you look at the people who are running, I would like to think that they all have experience, they all have commitment and competence, and they believe that they have something to offer. When I ran for governor in Ekiti State, there were 21 aspirants who ran with me in that race. Ultimately, it was decided at the primaries, and someone emerged. I don't think we should be too worried. We have
you emerge, and that's why it's comfortable and it's positive for you.
No, but the rules are clear. The rules are clear. If we're having a direct primary, we know what we're dealing with. If we're having an indirect primary, we know who the delegates are. There is no under-the-table manipulation here. If you are entering into this race, you're very clear about what you're getting. You have to go and convince the ordinary members of this party and convince the delegates that you should be their choice. If you're not their choice, it's not the end of the world. We all should abide by the rules of the game, and then whoever wins at the end of the day would be the one who carries the ticket. And you're talking to someone who's superintending the presidential primary. In 2014, I was the chairman of the presidential primaries in Lagos that produced Muhammadu Buhari as the candidate of the party. And it was a very clean process. It was a very collectively endorsed process. All the losers came after the process to acknowledge the victory of the winner. And I think that's what we're going to get at the end of the day when this is over.
Okay, are the governors playing towards a consensus candidate? And could that candidate be your good self? I mean, you are the chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum. Do you have the backing of governors across parties?
Even if I have the backing of governors across party,
you will not.
The governors of the other party, the opposition party, are not going to vote in the primaries of the APC. Okay. But I would like to think, having presided over the affairs of the Nigerian Governors Forum in the last 3 years plus, clearly I've earned the understanding and respect of my colleagues. That's why they put me in that position. And they believe that I have delivered of myself creditably in the position.
I went home and the core leadership of our party in Edo North, which is where I come from, representing 6 local governments, decided that I should represent them at the level of the Senate. And I did accept. There is nothing contradictory. I mean, in history, there have been people. I don't know how much you've not been involved in politics. I do remember very well one late President Shagari, now of blessed memory. He wanted to be a senator, and at the last minute, the party decided that rather he be senator. Those who wanted to be president were asked to step down for him, and he became the president. All that is history. So there's no contradiction. Now, my decision to contest is I do appreciate that in the Senate, you have an important role to play. But obviously, the chief executive of Nigeria directs the affairs of this country. And I think that given my background, I have passed through all the layers. I have worked at the lowest level. the most subordinated position in industry. I have been a victim of economic power. I have also been victim of misuse of political power. I have also fought power and interrogated power. And I became a governor of the state. I tried to demonstrate some of the things I preached when I was in the NLC. I believe in it. If you look at the hospitals I built in Edo, they are not typical government kind of hospital. I wanted the best for our people. I built beautiful schools. I believe that I have something different. So when you ask me, so that is why I want to contest. I think that we can move the country away from where it is now, and move it forward in some specific ways. I am fanatical, for example, about jobs. Because if there were no jobs, I would not be a worker. And if I wasn't a worker, I would be a union leader. And it is my activities as union leader, up to the level of being president of Nigeria Labour Congress, that I invested in my governorship of Edo State, not money. And I thank God that at the end of 8 years, Edo people recognize that somebody came here and he made a difference.
But in spite of that, you had 2 commissioners in your cabinet who actually kicked against your bid
this
for
is trivializing the issues.
Senate.
This, with due respect to you, this is trivializing the issues. 2 commissioners. Do you know the population of Edo State?
I'm saying at least.
Now, if I sack a commissioner
for
want of performance, I sack a commissioner for incompetence, or a commissioner for some reasons in this environment is hungry and somebody offer him or her something, and he chooses to make a statement. Do you know how many commissioners I had in the period of 8 years? If views of commissioner matter, then go and take the assemble the commissioners who work with me and ask them to vote. I don't think you want to waste
So
time
your
on that
change
one.
of mind has
the real other question, which I think
the other question,
about Asiwaju,
exactly.
Yeah, he's a man I respect very much. When he was governor of Lagos State, I was president of the NLC, and I gave him as much trouble as I could. I forced him to pay minimum wage. I engaged him on social issues, and I also admire some of the things he achieved in Lagos, with a small revenue base of about 600 million that time. And by the time he left office, he has raised the revenue base to an enviable level. Today, if any governor is talking about internally generated revenue, you cannot but acknowledge the pioneering effort of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. But the good news is that the presidency of Nigeria and my candidature is not against Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I am contesting for the presidency of Nigeria. I am not contesting against Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So don't put it that way. And when you talk about allied, the contest shouldn't be between opponents or adversaries. We are friends. I respect him, and I'm sure he has some respect for me. I'm talking about alliance. Some of those, as what you raised, from zero to where they are contesting. But I was already a household name before I became president of Nigeria Labour Congress, and before I became governor of Edo State. And then we met on the same party. He formed the APC, ACN, and I was the second governor on ACN platform. So I respect him, and I'm sure he understands that it is not about him. It's about Nigeria.
Okay. You say it's not a contest, but we do know there's just one ticket. You have also said that you have not returned your senatorial form. Is that a plan B? Is that a fallback plan? How do you have intentions to run for the presidency and then Senate at the same time?
The two.
But you said, you told us earlier you haven't dropped the form.
Don't make this a big issue. I think what is important for my, in the context of my declaration today is, what will I want to do differently? Now that my people ask me to be president, if you go to those people and ask them, between president and Senate, between the presidency and Senate, which one will you prefer for Oshomole? They will tell you they prefer president.
Well, it is a crowded field, isn't it? And yesterday we had 3 more declarations. Governor Fayemi, former Governor Adams Oshomole, and former Governor Godswill Akpabio. And the whole process, it depends on who you ask. Some people will argue that we're in a democracy, each individual has the right to pursue his ambitions as far as it will take them. But the whole process does look somewhat unwieldy, somewhat farcical, quite frankly, and it's robbing it of the gravitas that it deserves at this really critical time. I mean, I hate to say it's such a cliche now. It's a make or break election, but cliches only become cliches because they're true. It is make or break. So I wonder, is there some kind of a Machiavellian plot that these politicians are aware of that the rest of us don't know? Is there some kind of game plan Is this some way for the party to raise money? I'm just wondering, why is it that everybody and their grandmother's pet is basically throwing their hats in the ring? Today we have another declaration. Former Governor or Senator Ibikunle Amosun is on today. 9th of May, we have Pastor Tunde Bakare declaring for president, all under the APC. And these are the Southerners we're talking about. They're now, it's looking like it will be about 14. That's rounded up to 15, since APC has even extended their deadline for sale of forms to May 10th. So they're expecting more people. And so these are the Southerners, Southwest and Southeast. There's a lot of anxiety at the moment. You now have a group like the Igbo Elders Forum, who have generally been really sort of sanguine throughout this whole process. Now, seeming to demonstrate more anger, they're more forceful, using very strong words, saying that any Igbo indigene who is in support of a northern candidate will be disowned, using words like sabotage. These are strong words that are matching strong emotions. Right now, it's panic stations at the way things are going. It's all up in the air. People need some certainty to douse the anxiety that they're feeling. You've had protests at the APC and the PDP secretariat, people going there demanding a southern president because it's looking like it might not happen. Another indication that it might not happen is just this preponderance of southern aspirants, because a divided house cannot stand, can it? Because it's now looking as if they're doing all of this just to usher in a northern aspirant. So it's causing real anxiety. In the Southwest as well, there's going to be a meeting of the Southwest stakeholders and the Southwest aspirants seeking to find some kind of consensus, seeking to create order out of what looks like chaos. And I wish them all the best in that, because frankly, it's such a muddy picture right now. It's not clear at all.
Dr. Batty?
Okay, clearly the 2023 process is beginning to show how divided Nigeria is in terms of who gets power at the center and the national questions that we have been dealing with since the First Republic. On Tuesday, I wrote a piece in which I argued that the road to 2023 is a bumpy road. And in that piece, in which I use the dialogue format, I raised a question. I said that the Nigerian presidency is becoming like a pool's game, where people will palm one, palm two, and everybody is just thinking that this thing has become a lottery. Given the number of persons who keep showing up, everybody wants to be a president. Before then, I had said on this program that I'm surprised that certain persons have not even joined the race. Maybe they will still do so, because the whole thing is looking like a joke. And the question to ask are as follows. One, I think that the problem is about the politics of zoning and rotational presidents, the North-South divide in Nigeria, who becomes president. Now the PDP, in this instance, has had to abandon Section 73C of its constitution. The PDP was the first political party that came up with this idea of rotational presidency. So they say they've abandoned it, they're having a level playing field. You have the APC, on the other hand, say, it will adopt the format of the PDP and do rotational presidency. But somewhere down the line, you now had the chairman of the APC, the ruling party, who himself is a beneficiary of the rotational principle, saying that no, the APC has not decided on zoning. And hence, people are suspicious. The critics, observers, political analysts say that it looks like there's a grand plan to ensure that whatever happens, the presidency of Nigeria goes back to the north. And that there is, some kind of inheritance structure in place post the Buhari administration. The question to ask, which is the second major point, is this. Who is the hidden puppeteer? Is it the presidency? Could it be certain forces in the north? Could it be some fifth columnists who have turned this thing into a lottery? And then again, is there a consensus within the South? Why do I ask that question? Which takes me to the third major point. The Imobi or Aneze Ndigbo is supposed to meet today. That's the highest decision-making body in the Aneze Ndigbo. And what is their objective? Their objective is to say that, look, the presidency must come to the Southeast. It's non-negotiable. And they want to call all the aspirants together and say, look, you guys must decide, and let's have a consensus candidate on the platform of the APC and the platform of the PDP so that the East, Southeast can stand strong. Okay, would that consensus work? Before now, some PDP aspirants, including persons from the East, came together. The idea of consensus did not work. The Northerners even tried to arrange a consensus through the Northern Elders Forum. It didn't work. Tomorrow, well, in that same Southeast, a group called the Igbo Elders Forum, which was the one you referred to, led by Dr. Chukwuemeka Ezeife, former governor of Anambra State and a statesman, is saying that, in fact, an Igbo man must not accept to be a vice presidential candidate. He refers to such persons who may be nursing such ideas as renegades and bootlickers, and that Igbo will place a curse on those persons and their families for generations. That was an obvious threat against Nigeria, against individuals who may want to exercise the option of maybe, agreeing to be a vice president to somebody from the south or west or south, or from the northern part of the country. And I thought what Chief Ezeife was doing in that regard is to stoke the embers of disunity and of intimidation. I thought that will amount, maybe interpreted by certain persons as hate speech. Now, the people of the Southwest, on the platform of the APC, they plan to meet tomorrow. The meeting, we're told, has been called by Aremo Olusegun Oshoba, former governor of Ogun State and a leader of the APC, and also Chief Bisi Akande, former governor of Osun State, and also an APC leader, to bring all the aspirants on the platform of the APC together and see whether a consensus candidate can emerge. Well, I'll be surprised if that meeting holds. And I'll be surprised, in fact, if anybody agrees to any consensus. Because, Chief Oshoba and Chief Akande, they are allies of, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who is one of the major contenders. So, do you see the possibility of anybody stepping down for him? No. Which then takes me to my fourth point, which means, and linkage with the first point, it looks like there is a hidden puppeteer who is playing games to make sure that a southern candidate does not emerge. And I think that some of these southern candidates, they are part of the plot. Take the PDP. Out of the 15 candidates that passed, out of the 17 that signified interest, 10 of them are from the south. 5 are from the north, so they are in a safe place in the north. Out of 5, it's easy to arrange and support somebody. If you look at the APC, out of about, so far, I think, 14 candidates that have declared, they were told that the number may go up to about 18, because some of them are still going to declare today, tomorrow. Now, if you look at that list, there are 3 northerners. Ashim Olawepo from Kwara, Governor Bagudu, and also Yahya Bello of North Central. Again, in the APC, it's very easy to just decide on one of those ones from the north. And the APC analysts have been saying that they are just waiting for the PDP. The PDP is going to hold this convention May 39, May 30. The APC will follow the following day. So if the PDP chooses a northern candidate, the APC will be left with no option but to choose a northern candidate. And all of us will be told that, this is a democratic process. So the whole thing is already being rigged. It's already been manipulated. We need to identify those people who are manipulating. And what I don't understand is this kind of jocular or unserious approach to the presidency by some of the people who have emerged from the south. When Rotimi Amechi from the south was declaring, Adams Oshiomhole was there. He attended the ceremony. The same Adams Oshiomhole now is declaring. When Kayode Fayemi of Ekiti State was declaring yesterday, I saw this long cap and I was looking at it. It turned out it was former Governor Amosun of Ogun State. He was attending the declaration of a man who is going to be his rival at the convention, at the primaries. Governor Amusu, well, he's now Senator Amusu, he's going to declare today. I wouldn't be surprised if we see 4 or 5 Southerners who are declared also there. So the Northerners will look at us and say, these people are not serious.
They're showing camaraderie.
Which camaraderie?
Like Peter Obi did when he went to Atiku's. They're trying to show they're not doing politics of bitterness and rank.
I know, I understand, but I hope that this is not, I'm just raising my fears. I hope this is not about divide and rule. Because the main point to be made is that 10 persons on the platform of the PDP from the South, they will divide the delegates. These guys have a war chest. All the people in the APC coming out from every corner, in the Southwest, they will make it impossible for any one of them to win. So it will give the advantage to other people. You think those 3 Northerners and the other 5, they are going to bring delegates too. Their own delegates will be united. And what will be told is that this has been a democratic process. When all of this is over, I don't support Ibueda's forum and Dr. Ezefe saying they will apply courses. No, that should not be part of it. That's too metaphysical, and too antediluvian. But we should ask questions about the people who sabotage the South.
The traitors.
So, it's crystal clear. I try my hands on chess sometimes. And there's an opening move in chess called the gambit. It has its origin in Italian. There's this Italian phrase, dare il gambito. That means to put your leg in front for somebody to fall down. So that's what they're doing. And they're all playing the gambit. So it's not only the North. The Southwest is playing the gambit. Don't be fooled by all this declaration. It's a gambit. They're deliberately putting a lot of people in the field to crowd the field as part of their gambit. Because when you're playing a gambit, it looks like you're losing, you're sacrificing something. So don't be surprised. All the declarations of people close to Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, they might be part of the Tinubu gambit. Don't be surprised. Even Vice President Shibajo's declaration might be part of the Tinubu gambit. Don't be surprised. Time will tell. So this so-called fight, you think they're fighting amongst themselves, are politicians playing their game. In the Southeast, they're playing their gambit too. Their gambit is to populate the field. It looks as though there's disunity, there's discord, but it's a gambit. And a gambit is almost a smoke screen for what you're going to do, because you're going to look as though you are vulnerable, but it's a lie. Then, the sticking point is the gambit being played by the North. And this is where their gambit becomes more interesting. When you look at the delegate pool, the North has got most of the delegates that will be voting across both party lines. And they're deliberately playing their gambit not to overcrowd the field, not to overpopulate it, but to put what I call strategic positioning and play a counter gambit of some sort, because for every gambit there's a counter gambit. So to play a counter gambit of some sort to what the Southwest and Southeast is doing. So they're shimmerings of their candidates. They're putting 1 or 2 or 3 in there. You see the declaration is coming out. They're getting ready. Because most of the people that are making declarations will split these blocks of delegates among themselves, take the block, then look for what they can fight across the northern states, the Northeast, the Northwest, and the likes. And if care isn't taken, it might easily tilt towards it. And you see, everybody wants power to come to the South. But this is politics. And politics, like I said 2 days ago, is a game. It's like game theory. It is calculations and counter-calculations. And that's what is coming out here. Everybody is throwing his best foot forward in the game, but the calculations as we speak today is slanted against the Southwest and the Southeast because of that big delegate fold. There are going to be thousands of more declarations. He said Pastor Tunde Bakare. Pastor Tunde Bakare was hailing Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu a couple of months ago, and now he's in the race. So I'll tell you too, he's part of that gambit too. Probably that gambit angle. Who will cut it is if the South can do a deal with those delegates in the Northeast and the Northwest, because those delegate pool are going to dominate. And even when you look at the election numbers, those 2 areas have the largest polling units in the country. I would have said more, but there's no time. That's all on New Zealand. We'll take a short break.
The North has the largest number of delegates.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. We'll have Rotu Sudiri, Michael Wilson, Adesu Omora, Aaron Akejala to give us updates on Africa, global business, COVID-19, sporting activities across the globe. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on the Rise News. Our dependable Rotu Sudiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning.
Good morning, all. Yes, we begin with Real Madrid. What a match! I'm kidding. I can't wait for Aaron to come on this morning. Mr. Ifeni must be in a great mood. We begin, of course, with electioneering. We saw every politician in this country wants to make sure that their declaration is actually shown on Arise News. Yesterday, I mean, we had like 3 of them in a row. The question now is the amount of money that the political parties are set to get. This day newspaper has a cover story on it saying that one of the parties is set to reap about 30 billion. By the way, the APC, I understand, has now extended its time for nomination forms to be received. So they set to get even more money. I think this day said 30 billion is what they're set to collect. That's at the presidential level. When you include the governorship races, the House of Assembly and everything else, it goes into the multiples of billions. And that's for all the political parties. Now, there's a debate that some friends and I were having late last night about the impact of electioneering on, well, first let me deal with inflation. For the amount of liquidity that's going to be flowing through the system because of all the payments that are going to be made, you're going to have what's possibly demand pull inflation. Nigeria has had cost push for quite a while, structural issues that have been pushing up costs of food items, goods and services, and so on and so forth. Demand pull is the amount of money that you're going to be seeing in the system that's going to be sloshing around that can actually push up prices of goods and services when you've got a lot of money in the system chasing after fewer goods. So that's one. That's inflation. The bigger debate is on the naira, the currency. Now, because of the amount of money that we're talking about here in the billions, you're probably going to see demand for foreign exchange for dollars to be able to pay for this stuff, which is, with an increase in demand for dollars, you've possibly got a weakening naira. However, there was a counterpoint some friends of mine made, which is that if there's already dollars that have been stockpiled over the amount of time to build a war chest, then that now is going to be deployed into the system to cover to our ease of electioneering, and therefore that might counteract that. So the question now is, which one weighs what? Is it if the stockpile that already exists is higher than the demand for new dollars to cover electioneering, then whichever one wins out. But I mean, historically,
I like to jump on that.
Yeah, do jump on that because it was very intense that we had last night. So that's what we're seeing. Parties are set to make a whole lot of money. There's going to be an impact on inflation, demand pull, and also an impact on the currency. We go to telecommunications. Alton has written a letter to the NCC stating that they need to raise the costs for their services that they provide. If we take a quick look at the summary, it's a 40% rise, calls, SMS, and data. They wrote a letter to the NCC. They want the floor for voice calls to go from 6 naira 40 kobo to 8 naira 95. SMS price cap to go from 4 naira, you get that 4 naira alert when you send an SMS, to 5 naira 61. The justification in the Finance Act, the 5% excise duty on telco services, also rising energy costs. They're saying that their operational costs have risen to about 35%. They talked about the war in Ukraine, diesel costs for running base stations, and so on and so forth. If you look at the existing charges, that levies and taxes that telcos in Nigeria are facing, this is not an exhaustive list. You've got right-of-way charges, you've got the National Information Technology Development Fund levy, the National Cybersecurity Fund, the annual operating levy, not to even include corporate income tax, education fees, education tax, and all those other taxes. So telcos are facing a lot of headwinds. Cost of business is going up. I believe they do have a case to have that increase. However, are wages increasing for the average Nigerian who is making calls and so on? No. So that's the debate there. From telecommunications, we go to LPG. Very, very interesting forum that took place a couple days ago, where players in the sector said that Nigeria needs about $170 million or so development investment in local LPG or 750, excuse me, 750 million needed to reach 5 million metric tons of annual consumption. They want the funds to be deployed to transport and retail infrastructure. They're saying if you switch 50% of kerosene and firewood users to LPG, you could generate as much as 27 million. This was at the African Refiners and Distributors Association Summit that took place. Also saying that flared gas optimization could impact GDP to the tune of about $1 billion per year. A couple other quick stats on what's Africa's consumption realities and potential. Sub-Saharan Africa, less than 1% of global LPG consumption, even as we are 14% of global population. Although consumption has been climbing, it's doubled since 2010, 9.7% annual growth rate over the past decade, and the market size could be $210 billion by 2028 at potential, yes. And then finally for Nigeria, the projected market size for Nigeria LPG, $10 billion. Per capita consumption has gone up from 1.8 kilograms 2015 to 5 kilograms in 2021. Then this is the cocoa of the matter in local parlance. Domestic demand, 400,000 metric tons in 2016 to over 1 million metric tons in 2021. But look at the LPG storage capacity, 60,000 metric tons, which is why we import about 75% of what we need into the country.
Capital injection, number one, really very important. Take anti-gas flare policies really very seriously. Liberalize the sector and go back, to the laws that guide oil and gas in this country. We know how we fought so hard before we passed the PIA, as it is called now. So if you fully bring that about, that will happen. As regards the dollar and the naira, because of the electionary preference, Rotus definitely is going to lead some level of inflation because there's going to be more money in circulation, obviously. I mean, I can take you back to 73. After Yom Kippur War, there was a big inflation in Nigeria because there was so much money in the economy. And because of the uptake as regards crude oil price increase from $3 per barrel to $12 per barrel, big inflation. The inflation continued up to 74, 75 when we had the dodgy come in, some dodgy money, to be able to bring down the pressure, put more money in the hands of civil servants and the likes. The inflation only tapered out in the 80s. But it's going to cause a lot of inflation. But the other side to it, as regards those stalled dollars that you're talking about is, the stalled dollar should be able to counteract the effect. But when you look at it critically, Rotus, those spendings are specific set spendings. They are not cross-sectoral spendings. Okay. So that's why it doesn't counteract the effect effectively. And that's why when you see that after the 2015 elections, we had a dial back as regards, the pressures on the Naira, and the Naira had a quick beating. I think it trickled up to 300 or 400 to the dollar. So the problem is it's not cross-sectorial spending. It's just spending targeted at media and the likes and everything. So specific industries get that dollar push.
But what about electioneering though? That's the thing, the whole ease of electioneering. So there's still that.
It's not still cross-sectorial spending. The sectors that get it, probably transport sector and the likes in terms of logistics, the media sector largely, real estate and hospitality, use of hotels and campaign grounds and the like.
When I say electioneering, I'm talking about delegates, so I'm also including delegates and the whole...
But a lot of that cash pool is very residual because they just take that money, keep it in their hands. So it doesn't spread across sector.
APC, hold on. The APC raising up to about 30 billion naira from the sale of farms, or the PDP also using, the election season as an opportunity to raise funds. It's part of it. It's been the tradition. There's always too much money in circulation during election time. What has happened this time around is that the APC, with their 100 million, 50 million, requests, they've raised the bar. And the argument is that, look, the party are taking a critical look at this because they need money to run the election. They need a war chest. With a war chest of 30 billion naira, the party will be able to do a lot. But as someone pointed out, who was I quoting the other day, one of the life body of Bench's members, Austin Osigwe, SAN, he was saying that, look, maybe we need to take another look at the electoral the section of the law on electoral financing and be more specific and insist on those specific provisions under the law. Otherwise, politicians can just spend as much as they like. And that will affect, of course, the fortunes of the Naira and also inflation. So how do you manage that? Through, regulation. Another point that was made, was that even the party itself recognizes that there are contenders and there are pretenders in the presidential or the political process. And I thought that was an interesting point, that was raised there. So who are the contenders? Who are the pretenders? We're likely to know that by next week. The APC has extended the payment of for nomination and expression of interest funds till a deadline of May 11 or thereabouts. Now we will now know, because it's probably not all these people declaring that will be able to mobilize the 100 million.
Yeah.
Another side of it is that maybe at the end of the day, many of them will even step down. Now, as for the telecom operators, they want to increase services for data, for SMS, up to 40%.
Yep.
They are saying cost of doing business has gone up by 35%.
Yes.
So they have put 5% on top of it to punish ordinary people.
Doctor, is it punishment?
Where they're transferring costs.
Exactly. There you go.
That's how economists will put it.
Yeah.
They are transferring costs. But an ordinary person like me, I see it as punishment. Okay? So the question to ask is, what is the role of the regulator? Alton and Alcon, the telecom operators and the telecom owners, they had said before now that they are even going to shut down in some states of the Federation because of multiple taxation, because of problem with diesel, because of other logistics problems that they face, and the hostility of the business environment. They can make that point and negotiate with the government and the relevant stakeholders to see how to address that. But the way it happens, of course, is that they always pass the cost. Why are they not looking at the opportunity that they have been given for financial inclusion? Two of them have been given licenses now, right? Is it two of them or five? Two of them, MTN and Airtel. And
Mafab.
Okay, three. So
no, it's two. It was MTN and Mafab.
Two. So the opportunity that is open to them in that regard, we also, help them within the economy. But all these people, they always look at the negative side. They don't even want to look at trade-offs. So, and this is the evil of extreme capitalism, in my view. So I speak on behalf of the consumers of telecom services. Right. We Nigerians who talk aplenty and who have been given an opportunity for freedom of expression with these telephones, although some people carry cheap phones about, they don't get good research. But in other words, I'm saying anything to further abbreviate our right to interact, to engage, to communicate. That's what government should focus on as it negotiates with this telecom companies.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough.
Thank you so much, Rotis. We ran out of time. I didn't get to contribute today.
Text message.
Yes.
That's like 4
Well, moving on now to business updates with Michael Wilson, who's joining us from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. Basically, yes, of course, that expected interest rate rise in the United States, but there were sort of dovish undertones to what Jay Powell was actually saying. So mainland China stocks up, as are shares, mostly in Asia Pacific as well. Remember that China has been on holiday for the Labor holiday for the past 2 or 3 days. Shanghai up about 1%. Chinese services sector, though, shrunk quite considerably in April. It actually is showing the extent of the COVID zero policies, which recorded its second largest fall on record from 42 to 36.2. That's pretty far down in the index of business optimism. This continuing saga with Didi, the Chinese ride-hailing giant, once again it's being investigated. Its IPO is being investigated by the SEC. It did it to start with, stocks down about, share prices down about 85% since all that happened, and it's fallen actually again, shares down about 5%, given that news again. So it's not a wonderful future for IPOs. I'll come on to that in a moment. India moved out of its rate rising cycle. People weren't expecting this, but it did. It increased its repo rate, that's the rate at which it lends to actually banks, by 40 basis points to 4.4%. And it's the first rate hike in nearly 4 years. So let's go to the United States and see what happened there. Stock futures this morning actually fell very, very slightly. Down about 46 points, but that does contrast with, in real trading terms, in the real trading hours, the Dow up 932 points yesterday. Stocks rising for a third straight day to start the month. Yes, there was that increase in base rate. But the big question, I mean, apart from the relative dovishness, and it was taken that there won't be any more 0.75%. There won't be any 0.75% increases. Any kind of increase is going to be about 0.5%. But of course, the big question is what consumers actually going to do. Will they find that they join in with a relief rally in the stock markets? I don't think they will. I think they're just like most people, finding things are rather expensive. Now back to the SEC, and as well as they're looking at DD, they've got 80 firms now that they're listing at, which are facing delisting risk, includes China's JD.com, Pinduoduo, Bilibili, and NetEase. So these are big companies. The SEC's been expanding that list, and this is the Foreign Companies Accountable Act. And basically, what it's saying is that if these companies don't comply for 3 years in a row with American auditing standards, they will be investigated, and that's what's happening right now. Now, here's some interesting figures for you. We were talking yesterday, I was talking at length with Reuters about the EU oil ban and how gas, of course, was not mentioned at all, but there are various companies still coming into line. Now, it really depends. Is this going to hurt the Russian economy? Well, it really depends on whether or not the producers can switch to Asia. We know that most of the 27 states are going to stop importing oil by the end of the year, but Hungary's still looking. Slovakia and Czech Republic are still actually saying, well, Hungary's saying no. Hungary, the Slovak and Czech Republics still have their doubts about it. Now, these are the important crunchable figures. So, Russian budget, 45% of that is oil income. Ural oil, now this is not something that's not Brent and it's not WTI, this is Ural oil. It's now trading at $70 a barrel, which is very, very handy for Russian revenues. They make money when it's down at $40 a barrel, so they're actually getting quite, and that's being reflected. You see this as well, the ruble is now a 2-year high against the dollar after those ban proposals. So it's not all one way, and there's plenty of play out mechanisms, I would have thought, within this market, particularly as India and China are buying cheap oil, or at least their refiners are. Now, a fourth straight interest rate rise in the UK. Of course, it's risky. Annual inflation hit a 30-year high of 7% in March as food and energy prices actually go. So will it be a 0.75%? Will it be 0.5%? Will it be 0.25%? Expecting a 0.25%, which would take the overall level to 1% when the MPC announces its decision at noon today. We were talking about oil company profits yesterday. BP yesterday, Shell today, much higher than expected, $9.1 billion dollars rather. A big dividend. It's going to be returning money to shareholders. More and more calls for a windfall tax on oil, and we've been down that line, and we discussed it yesterday. We can discuss it again today, should you so wish. There's plenty of life left in Britain's high streets, according to the new man who's taken over at Sports Direct. He's related to the old chairman Mike Ashley. He's called Michael Murray, and he's saying that it's going to take younger people, and he's only 32 years old, to try and pull through what he sees as a vision for the high street. As far as commodities are concerned, oil leaping up on the EU oil ban, much as you'd expect. And basically, Bitcoin, now I mentioned this, still call it a commodity, up to 40,000 after that interest rate rise yesterday, increasing in that kind of level, simply because of the relative dovishness of J. Powell as far as further interest rates are concerned. And when the bulls are out grazing as they are this morning, then that tends to help Bitcoin as well. That's the global view.
So I quickly want to say something about J. Powell. A lot of people said, yes, good stuff, 0.5% increase in interest rate, but not good enough. What do you say as regards that?
What do you mean not good enough? You mean it should have been more? Is that what they're saying?
It should have been more, because it can't stem the tide of inflation.
well, you can debate this. What the market's saying, which is what I comment on, is the fact that 0.5 was expected and 0.5 was delivered. What that suggests to me is, yes, they're doubling down on inflation, but at the same time, they're not being over hawkish. And that was really what Jay Powell was saying in his accompanying notes to that decision yesterday. That he's sort of saying, and again, it's only sort of saying because most central banks work by implication rather than direct statements, sort of saying the next interest rate rise, if they will be 0.5% rather than 0.75%. Whether that's enough or not, I don't really know. I think that what they're trying to do is engineer a soft landing, which is what most central banks try to do at times like this.
Right, just a quick one about Michael Murray. I thought the general wisdom at the moment was that the high street is dead. Doesn't it seem like quite a huge gamble? I mean, they've spent £10 million after like a behemoth, like Topshop, like Debenhams. They couldn't survive COVID. Well, apparently it wasn't all about COVID. The footfall had been declining. And now they've opened the Sports Direct sort of like emporium. But I'm not entirely convinced. Yes, they have gaming. Everybody does that in their house. They have sports bras, fitting services. You can get your sports bra online and return it if it doesn't fit and exchange it. I'm not entirely convinced. I mean, it's really impressive to have achieved this feat at the age of 32, and I'm not going to link it to nepotism. I'm sure it's on the merits. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are that you're not comparing like with like. Debenhams and so on were important. There were lots of franchises in those kind of shops, and they clearly were out of date. Sports Direct isn't like that. I mean, it's not somewhere I shop, but I walk past it quite regularly, and it's full of trainers. And as you say, you can actually walk and browse, and they encourage people to do that. That is what the high street's actually about. So maybe he's onto something here, and he's going to open 40 new shops as well. He feels as though it's the experience of being able to walk around and touch things rather than online, which is it. That's what the high street does. If you can get there, and if you can park or your transport's quite good, then the high street is the thing for you, because you can go and touch the goods and decide whether you actually want them or not, and look at them rather than just online. It's as simple as that. I think that's what he's gambling on, but it's a very, very concentrated offering. That's the other important thing. So everything about trainers, everything about sports, but not mixing like some of these emporiums tried to do and have since failed.
Yeah, well, Topshop isn't a franchise, though. I also mentioned Topshop.
Obviously, what we're saying is that managing soaring inflation is a tall order. I wanted to ask you what you think of the turbulence that this is likely to create, and whether some economics will slip into recession. Because before now, we talked about Australia. After Australia, now the U.S. Federal Reserve, has raised by half a percentage points. Immediately, the Gulf states also responded. They raised their own rates too. India, also yesterday, the Reserve Bank of India, RBI, raised its repo rate. The stock market also responded. Do you see the possibility, of this response resulting in a situation whereby these central banks are trying to correct an error with an error, and which could create more distortions within the global markets, considering in particular the strategic importance of the Federal Reserve for dollar-denominated economies?
Lot there, Doctor. Okay, so yes, there will be mistakes. Of course, central banks make mistakes because, as we've often said, monetary policy is relatively clumsy, and of course there will be continuing question about whether this is too high or too low, whether they're acting fast enough or not. And look at the EU, for example, as an example of something which is of an organisation, or at least a bloc, which is actually standing back from those kind of things. Will the US go into recession? It might. I think that given the jobs figures and given the rate of employment and so on, I think it's doubtful, but it's of course possible. Will the UK go into recession? I think it's probably more likely. However, the one thing about the UK to remember is, even though these little interest rate rises are big if they're coming from a low base as far as mortgages are concerned, and a lot of people have mortgages in this country, the tightness of the labour market doesn't point to me to suggest a recession coming. It suggests there's a lot of job vacancies. Now, whether or not the combination of that, fewer immigrants from the EU and all the rest of it actually means a recession, possibly. But you know, let's be optimistic. It's almost impossible to say right now because there are too many other factors floating around, much bigger than the economies, even of the United States. Where is China going with Russia and Ukraine? Are we seeing the beginning of strongman politics and you know, all the rest of it? We can argue, we can talk about this. This is worth a documentary, and it stretches over every country in the world. Is that what we're looking towards, rather than democracies right now? Is that how things are going to change? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I just don't know. But at the moment, we're looking at central banks doing the best they can with fairly clumsy instruments, and we'll be on the sidelines looking at when they fail, no doubt.
Thank you so much, Michael, for your time. For update on COVID-19 pandemic, Adesua Mora is here with us. Adesua, great to have you. Good morning.
Good morning, Rufai. Great to be here. Good morning, Tundu, and good morning, Dr. Abati.
Morning.
Well, globally, we now know that there's a continued decrease in the number of infections and deaths when it comes to the COVID-19 pandemic. But let's look at the data specifically. During the week of 25th of April through to the 1st of May, over 3.8 million cases and over 15,000 deaths were reported from across the world, and those were decreases of 17% and 3% respectively. However, not all the regions of the world saw this decrease in trends. The number of new weekly cases increased in the African region by 31% and in the region of the Americas by 13%, while the number of new weekly deaths increased in the Southeast Asia region by 69%. The WHO says this is largely due to a delay in the reporting of deaths from India. Well, here in Nigeria, the latest data shows that 13 new infections and no COVID-19 related deaths were reported from 3 states, including the epicenter, Lagos. And still in Nigeria, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres was at the presidential villa yesterday as he ended his maiden 2-day visit to the country and 3 nations trip to Africa. Well, after a closed-door meeting with his host, President Muhammadu Buhari, Antonio Guterres revealed some of the issues they discussed behind closed doors, to include the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's listen to what he said about vaccination, vaccine equity and justice, and especially in Nigeria.
All African countries victim of the unequal recovery from COVID-19. Despite the government's ambitious goal to vaccinate 40% of the population by the end of last year, only about 64% have been vaccinated so far. I have consistently sounded the alarm and called on wealthier countries and pharmaceutical companies to step up their donations and to invest in local vaccine production, supporting our fight to counter vaccine misinformation and vaccine injustice. With many competing health priorities in Nigeria, I do believe that vaccinations are must be integrated with all other vital vaccinations.
Antonio Guterres there, and this is something the Nigerian government has been trying to do, getting all the vaccines in one spot for everybody who comes to get vaccinated. Well, the long-term effects of COVID-19 can have detrimental effects on a person's brain functioning. According to a latest study from the UK on post-COVID-19 effects, that study has now revealed that brain functioning damage as a result of severity of COVID-19 infections can be equal to 20 years of aging and also equal to the loss of 10 IQ points. They found that people are beginning to give responses. Those out of the 46 people that were part of the study, they were giving slower responses for their age, 20 years slower than they should. And finally, a handful of reporters have tested positive for COVID-19 since the White House Correspondents' Dinner took place on April 30th. And that's according to the president of the Correspondents Association in the United States. Among those who have tested positive after the event of 2,600 attendees are ABC's News chief Washington correspondent, John Carl, who actually shook hands with President Joe Biden. We haven't heard from the White House if the president is worried about this or if he has tested positive or not. You recall that Vice President Kamala Harris actually came down with COVID-19, however, before the dinner. Another person who has tested positive is the chief national correspondent for the Voice of America, Steve Harmon. The dinner required proof of vaccination and a same-day negative test, and boosters were strongly encouraged. However, masking was optional on the day. Back to you guys.
Recall at Deswa, that Rose Garden super spreader event at which 8 people, according to initial reports, caught COVID-19 when Donald Trump was celebrating his announcement of Amy Coney Barrett as a Justice of the Supreme Court, and how President Trump and his administration were completely lambasted for that. I wonder if it's going to be the same now that we've had this news about the White House Correspondents' Dinner. I wonder how the White House today will distinguish themselves from the White House then, which refused to do any contact tracing and didn't really take it that seriously. I wonder how they might try and redeem this situation, which does seem quite reckless. It always does. When the government in power at that point, doing all the administration, giving all the rules and regulations and policies, can end up with a super spreader event. It's really quite unfortunate. And this other news about losing 10 IQ points as a result of COVID. I mean, does the catalogue of horrors ever end? We've been told already that having suffered from COVID-19, a person is more, vulnerable to chronic kidney issues, heart complications, multi-system inflammation. I mean, the list just seems to go on and on. COVID is an absolute nightmare, as I've observed many times here. It's just horrific.
Well, I mean, let me just continue from where Tunde stopped. This is a study from the University of Cambridge and Imperial College involving about 46, patients. But this is not new. The WHO has talked about long COVID. The NHS on their website in the UK have also talked about long COVID. How, if you just make the mistake of getting infected at all, then of course you may be in it for a very long time. Similar studies have been conducted in the United States and also in Switzerland. Now, what this latest report is talking about is focusing on how it affects the IQ. And that if you get COVID and you're a victim of long COVID, 6-9 months after initial infection, you could lose your IQ, intelligence quotients to the degree of about 10 points. Or, you could start behaving like people in the age range between 50 and 70. But there are other symptoms. Apart from mental health crisis or the possibility of dementia, you could have muscle pains, you could have, heart rhythm problems, what they call, angioplasty or cardiovascular issues. You could suffer from fatigue. You could suffer all kinds of things, But, okay, long COVID, some people recover from it. Some people may never recover. And that's what makes this particular virus very frightening. However, in some other reports, it is said that the best way to avoid the possibility of severe disease and long COVID is just to get vaccinated as soon as you can. Because the whole idea of vaccination is that it can prevent you from coming down with severe disease. But of course, what we keep saying is that scientists keep telling us new things about this virus. And maybe perhaps that's why in China, the Chinese authorities in mainland China continue to insist that they will not accept people living with the virus. And Beijing is likely to go the way of Shanghai, with implications, not just for economic growth in China, but for the whole world. Well, the good news from the White House is that the infection rate is single digit. Despite all the precautions that were taken, that those who attend that White House come and eat event, should have been vaccinated and provide proof of vaccination. But of course, that infection rate in the US is going up, particularly with the subvariants of the BA2 Omicron, BA2.12.1 and BA2.2.12, that have been observed, even though the death rate has dropped from 400 per week to about 330 on the average. That is. Thank you. Thank you very much, Adesoa.